You're driving on a long road to Central Australia, about 527 miles north of Adelaide. Suddenly, you spot these mysterious sand pyramids popping up. The landscape around them is like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Just endless salmon-pink dust and the occasional stubborn shrub. As you keep going, you'll come across these random piles of pale earth scattered around. These are the first signs of Coober Pedy, a quirky opal mining town with about 2,500 people. These piles are waste soils from all the mining that's been going on for decades. But they're also a hint at the town's unique specialty, living underground. According to estimates, 60 to 80% of the population here lives in homes carved into the rock. Imagine walking through these neighborhoods, and all you see are these ventilation shafts sticking out and heaps of soil near the entrances. When winter rolls around, this underground lifestyle might seem a bit eccentric. But on a scorching summer's day, it all makes perfect sense. The temperature in Coober Pedy can reach 126 degrees Fahrenheit. It's so hot that birds have been known to fall from the sky, and people have to store their electronics in fridges. It's one of the hottest places on Earth, though the current record is held by Death Valley in California with its blistering 134 degrees. So, not to experience the heat that feels like someone is standing there with a blow dryer in your face, Coober Pedy dwellers have these awesome underground homes called dugouts. Some of them are hidden behind regular-looking small buildings. Living underground in Coober Pedy is a smart move for a few reasons. For example, it's always a comfortable 73 degrees down there, while the folks above ground are sweating buckets in scorching summers and shivering in freezing winters. The subterranean dwellers enjoy a perfect room temperature all year round. Living underground also saves some serious money. Coober Pedy generates its own electricity, mostly from wind and solar power. But running air conditioning above ground can cost an arm and a leg. Imagine paying a fortune just to keep cool when it's over 122 degrees Fahrenheit outside. No thank you. That's why living underground is a game changer. It keeps your energy bills in check. Now, let's talk money. Underground homes in Coober Pedy are surprisingly affordable. In a recent auction, you could snag a 3-bedroom house for around $40,000 Australian, which is about $26,000 in the US. Sure, some of these homes might need a little renovation, but it's a steal compared to regular prices in Australia. Living underground also means saying goodbye to pesky insects. Flies take one look at the entrance and decide they'd rather stay in the sunshine. Plus, there's no annoying sound or light pollution to disturb your peace. Dugouts might even protect you from earthquakes. The vibrations and rumblings just pass through without causing a fuss. Residents of Coober Pedy say they've experienced a couple of quakes and didn't even flinch. Of course, the safety of underground structures during seismic activity depends on their size and complexity. It may seem that building houses underground is a big deal, but making dugouts in Coober Pedy is easy. The rock there is like butter, so soft that you can scratch it with a pocket knife or even your fingernail. Back in the 60s and 70s, the people in Coober Pedy decided to expand their homes just like they did with their opal mines. Some lucky ones didn't even have to dig much because they started off with abandoned mine shafts. Nowadays, they've got fancy tunneling machines that can dig up to 6 cubic meters of rock per hour. That means you could have your very own dugout in less than a month. But hey, don't think that digging by hand is out of style. When these residents need more space, they just start hacking away. And sometimes these renovation projects make them some serious money. One guy found a massive gem sticking out of his wall while installing a shower, and a local hotel struck opals worth $1.5 million while building an extension. Also, the sandstone in Coober Pedy is so strong that you don't even need support. That means you can create huge rooms with lofty ceilings in any shape you want, without using any extra materials. These locals are living the high life with underground swimming pools, game rooms, fancy bathrooms, and swanky living rooms. One person even described his subterranean crib as a freaking castle, complete with 50,000 tumble bricks and arched doorways to every room. Seems like there are only pros, huh? Well, there's a major challenge when it comes to underground structures – dampness. Most rock dwellings that humans have inhabited are found in dry areas, from the impressive towers and walls at Mesa Verde in Colorado, where the ancestral Pueblo people lived for over 700 years, to the stunning temples and palaces carved into pink sandstone at Petra in Jordan. But dampness is not a problem in Cooper Pedy. This place only gets an average of less than 1/2 inch of rainfall per month during the summer. For comparison, building underground in wetter areas is a whole different story. Waterproofing the original London Underground tunnels, built back in the 19th century, was quite the challenge. They had to wrap each tunnel in layers of brick and generously coat it with bitumen. But nowadays, they have more modern methods. However, even with all those precautions, black mold still manages to make an appearance. And it's not just the London tunnels. Basements, bunkers, and car parks in high rainfall areas around the world suffer from the same issue. Cooper Pedy instead is sitting on 164 feet of porous sandstone. So, even underground, it's bone dry. To make their lives more comfortable, the locals do add ventilation shafts to ensure enough oxygen supply and let moisture escape from indoor activities. But these are often very simple pipes sticking out of the ceiling. If you ever visit Cooper Pedy but don't want to stay underground, well, there are still options on the surface for you. And if you want to check out some of the locals' dugouts, keep in mind that these Cooper Pedy residents are super private. So you'll only find out about their amazing digs if you get invited over for dinner. This town isn't the only cool underground settlement out there. People have been going underground to escape crazy climates for ages. We're talking way back to our ancestors in South Africa, who dropped their tools in a cave 2 million years ago. And even those Neanderthals in France were making mysterious piles of stalagmites during an ice age 176,000 years ago. Even chimpanzees knows what's up. They chill in caverns to beat the scorching heat in Senegal. You know Cappadocia, this place in Turkey all Insta-bloggers love to visit? Back in 1963, a man was doing some renovations in his basement when his poultry kept disappearing. Turns out they were sneaking into a hole he accidentally opened. Curiosity got the best of him, so he followed them in. And this guy stumbled upon a secret passageway, a steep underground path that led to a massive maze of niches and corridors. Welcome to the lost city of Derinkuyu. Derinkuyu is just one of many underground cities in the area, believed to have been built around the 8th century BCE. It was inhabited for ages and served as an emergency shelter for up to 20,000 people during times of invasion. This place had everything: ventilation shafts, wells, stables, churches, and even warehouses. Like in Cooper Pedy, living underground helped the locals deal with the crazy climate swings, scorching summers and freezing winters. While outside temperatures could go from below zero to above 86 degrees Fahrenheit, underground it's a comfortable 55. Even today, these man-made caves in Cappadocia are famous for their natural cooling powers. They're designed to keep things cool without using a ton of energy. They're now being used to store massive amounts of produce, like potatoes, lemons, and cabbage. These underground wonders are so popular that they're building even more of them.
Whenever you hear about ancient ruins, you almost never picture them being suspended somewhere, or just randomly hanging on the branch of a tree, right? In fact, for most of the ancient artifacts we have exposed in museums all over the world, archaeologists did quite an impressive amount of digging. You see, buildings have this funny way of fading away over time if not properly taken care of. Sometimes we need to reuse some building materials, so an older construction may be sacrificed in the process. Other times houses are abandoned, and once they are exposed to the elements on the surface, like rain or sunlight, they don't really stand a chance. Some just simply crumble away due to good old erosion. So the only way a piece of architecture can survive the test of time is if it's somehow gotten buried deep down. Now, how did they end up buried in the first place? Well, it's quite the comedy of errors. Ancient cities had a habit of gradually raising their ground level like a kid adding toppings to their ice cream sundae. You see, these settlements were always busy collecting food and building materials to keep up with their ever-growing population. But hey, who has time to deal with waste and rubbish? It wasn't exactly high on their to-do list back in the day. So when it came to building new houses, ancient civilizations found it much easier to save their sweat and tears by piling up the rubble and constructing right on top. But that's not all. Rivers would also occasionally flood and deposit a layer of sediment on the city floors, further encapsulating those ancient constructions. And in those dry regions like the desert, where the wind likes to show off its sand and dust dance moves, you can bet it was a constant struggle to keep the establishments clean. One hilarious example is the Sphinx, which had its head buried in sand until a group of archaeologists unearthed it in 1817. Some ancient towns eventually got covered up because they were completely abandoned. With less human activity to control their expansion, plant seeds couldn't resist the opportunity and sprouted all over the place. They gobbled up carbon dioxide from the air and grew, adding more and more bulk to the ground. Those cheeky roots even decided to stabilize the soil made from decaying plant matter, creating layers upon layers of earthy goodness. It's like the ultimate DIY project Mother Nature embarked on, with plants as her loyal helpers. The act of digging into the secrets of ancient civilizations is not just about unearthing a lost world. It's also an epic quest to reveal the hidden treasures beneath layers of history. But how do archaeologists know where to dig in the first place? If everything is covered in layers upon layers of sediments, debris, and plant roots, they must have some sort of system they rely on before embarking on a new project, right? For starters, they're not always the ones suggesting an archaeological dig in a certain location. Let me explain. Let's say you're a contractor and you want to build a new fancy apartment complex in your city. Some local legislations have certain requirements before your project can start, though. For instance, before anyone starts building on a piece of land, they might need to bring in specialists to check the soil. These clever folks can be archaeologists, geologists, or paleontologists, and they need to keep an eye on things during development. If any artifacts or ecofacts, fancy word for organic remnants, are discovered, these experts swoop in to excavate and study them. But what about sites that have nothing to do with bulldozers and yellow hats? Archaeologists have more than one trick up their sleeves when it comes to locating ancient hotspots. They dive deep into historic records with a healthy dose of detective work. By sniffing out old documents and maps, they can piece together the puzzle of human activity in a specific area. If a site has been visited before, it's even better. Finding records of past excavations or historical accounts can give archaeologists lots of information on where to continue their treasure hunt. Before archaeologists start swinging their shovels, they engage in a bit of a visual scan mission. Armed with a grid system, they'll stroll around the site, keeping their eyes peeled for any artifacts that might be hiding just beneath the Earth's upper layer. From groundstone tools to historic glass and even ancient garbage dumps, yes, they're all so valuable. These keen-eyed explorers can spot signs of human activity faster than most people. If they stumble upon midden soil, fancy term for a garbage dump, they know for sure that humans once called this place home. Archaeologists don't just rely on their trusty shovels, though. They have an arsenal of gadgets to aid in their search for hidden wonders. Geophysical tools are like their secret weapons. Take the resistivity meter, for example. This clever contraption measures the electrical component of the soil and any buried features or artifacts. A buried wall, for instance, will create a different resistivity reading than the surrounding soil. Magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar work in similar ways, showcasing potential hints of ancient treasures in the soil. And who could forget our trusty old friend, the GPS? It helps archaeologists map out precise locations, like a high-tech treasure map, leading them straight to their pot of gold. Care to virtually visit some of the most important archaeological sites in the world? Well, follow me. In the United Kingdom, for instance, you'll find this interesting place called Stonehenge. It's one of many henges scattered around, but this one really takes the cake. Picture this: massive ancient stones standing tall and proud, arranged in a funky outer ring and an inner horseshoe, with some smaller stones thrown in for good measure. And guess what? These amazing stones have been around for over 5,000 years. Talk about a serious case of rock-solid longevity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to local folklore, the legendary wizard Merlin whipped out his magic wand and poof, He teleported these massive stones all the way from Ireland. Apparently, some giants had assembled them there, but Merlin decided they would look much better at their new location. Others think it's just the ruined remains of an old Roman spiritual edifice. These amazing structures were built by our Bronze Age ancestors. With their simple tools and limited tech, they managed to create this monumental masterpiece. Impressive, right? Unfortunately, there's still so much we don't know about this area. Stonehenge's initial purpose remains a mystery to this day. Sure, there are lots of theories, but scientists have yet to agree on the subject. However, we do know that it's perfectly aligned to catch the sunrise during the summer and winter solstices. The ancient city of Pompeii is an equally amazing archaeological site. Picture this. Mount Vesuvius, a notorious troublemaker, decided to throw a volcanic tantrum and completely covered this ancient Roman city. It turned it into a time capsule, located outside present-day Naples in Italy. Fast forward to the year 1748, when a bunch of adventurous explorers stumbled upon Pompeii. Lo and behold, they discovered a treasure trove of well-preserved goodies: streets, houses, food. Probably a bit stale by then. Blingy jewelry, fancy sculptures, colorful frescoes, everyday household items, and even animal and human remains. It was like an epic archaeological party. From the looks of it, Pompeii had it all. Fancy houses and villas, a massive 20,000-seat arena, cute little artisan shops, hangouts like taverns. And let's not forget the saucy spots like those luxurious bathhouses for some intense pampering. There's also the sanctuary of Apollo, where people used to gather for their daily dose of worship. And of course, the bustling heart of the city, the Forum of Pompeii, where all the cool people used to hang out. And guess what? Pompeii is so cool that it made it to UNESCO's World Heritage List back in 1997. That's like the ultimate Hall of Fame for historical awesomeness. It also includes many other famous buildings and sites, like the Taj Mahal in India and the Acropolis of Athens in Greece.
Imagine this. When you're wandering around London, you're actually walking over hundreds of miles of tunnels, passageways, and abandoned subway stations. Yeah, there's a whole world down there, underground. What's actually hidden there? Let's try to find out. We didn't even know about this giant network of underground tunnels and passages until recently. People could only guess that there was something underground. It wasn't until 1980 that journalist Duncan Campbell managed to sneak into this underground world. He was able to find a small portal there. Campbell only had a bicycle, a flashlight, and a camera. Together with his friends, he later called them moles, he went to explore the mysterious undercity of London. And what they saw was astonishing. A giant, complex system. Ghost subway stations, post channels, secret tunnels, and much more. A city under a city. What's more interesting, no one truly knows what really is there. The history of this underground network is so great that nobody actually has its full map. But today, we're going to take a look at some places we know about. The first type is secret passageways. This includes all shelters and tunnels between famous buildings. For example, the passages leading from Buckingham and Westminster palaces. There are also more than 30 bunkers and tunnels scattered throughout the city. Each of these bunkers can accommodate hundreds of people. Many of these passages were created in the 20th century or even earlier. There are also those that date back to the times of the Industrial Revolution. They're all very old and honestly look truly creepy. The second type is postal passages. We know that the underground network is full of them. Unfortunately, we aren't sure about their exact locations. The most famous postal passage is the Postmaster General's secret tunnel. It's right in the heart of London. This passage was created in the middle of the 20th century to transport particularly important messages. This large tunnel stretches all the way to the working East End, breaking up into a network of small passages. And finally, the subway and its abandoned stations. Did you know that the first subway in the world appeared in London? The city's subway system is quite large right now, but there were actually even more stations before. Deep beneath the feet of London's residents lies a network of abandoned tube stations. Almost all of them have remained untouched since the last passenger left their platforms decades ago. There are more than 40 abandoned stations in the city. Let's talk about the most interesting and mysterious ones. London's Tube. This is a river tunnel which served as a test version for the engineers who built the first subway. It's located near the Tower of London. Once, it connected the northern and southern parts of the river. Now, these are just the remnants of the long-lost system. Only this small, round building recalls the times when people used it to get across the river. In the Victorian era, the population of London experienced a big boom. Of course, the authorities needed to do something about this. It took a few decades to fill the city with tons of bridges, different means of transport, and trains. And then, engineer Peter Barlow came up with the idea of creating a whole network of tunnels that would transport people under the city. At first, people were terrified. So much money for such a crazy idea. But we already know the end of this story. The construction of the tunnel was completed in less than a year, and in February 1870 it carried its first passengers. After a lot of criticism, fear, and improvements, in the end, the first full-fledged subway station was created. It closed around 150 years ago. The fate of the station was sealed when they built Tower Bridge right next to it, which sounds better, a walk in the fresh air over the bridge, or a paid trip through a dark, cramped tunnel. Of course, the Tower subway had to be closed down. Down Street Station was closed just 25 years after its opening. First of all, there were other, more convenient stations nearby. And secondly, the locals were rich and could afford more expensive means of transport. However, Down Street wasn't out of service for long. It came in handy again in 1939. The platform was bricked up, and the station was secretly transformed into the headquarters of the Executive Committee of the railway. Since many railroad tracks were damaged, this committee organized all underground movements. The committee hosted Winston Churchill himself, and a little later, they even built the rooms there for the cabinet ministers. Churchill affectionately called this place a barn, but since then, Down Street hasn't been used anymore. It's still empty to this very day, and the station has, to put it mildly, a creepy look. Aldwych. This station has a ridiculous backstory. Despite the fact that it was basically useless, it somehow lasted for about 80 years, and people almost never went there because there were more convenient alternatives nearby. But it's actually a good thing that they didn't close it for so long. Thanks to this, Aldwych Station saved the most valuable treasures of England. Here, people once hid the most precious works of art and relics. For example, the world-famous Elgin marbles. In the 60s, the station started working only during rush hours on weekdays, and in 1994, it was mercifully spared from suffering, simply because they didn't want to spend extra money to replace the elevators here. Now, this station is often used for filming many famous British TV series. You can also check it out during the tour of Hidden London. Clapham South. Yes, technically it's not an abandoned station, but few people know that once it served as living quarters for new arrivals to Britain. There were beds and wash basins for them. It was quite noisy as people heard passing trains all the time, so it couldn't be called the most comfortable accommodation. Those who stayed there paid 6 shillings 6 pence a day, which is equivalent to 33 pence today. They still haven't taken down the signs for medical aid points and an improvised canteen. You can still see them during the tour to this station. Brompton Road. The Piccadilly line is downright full of abandoned tube stations. This station suffered the same fate as Down Street. It was simply too close to its neighbors and was doomed to be deserted from the very beginning. In 1926, the authorities closed Brompton Road for 5 months, and less than 10 years after this, they closed it completely. In the middle of the 20th century, this station started to be used again, just like Down Street. During times of emergency, this place could serve as an underground bunker with the command post on the upper floors and the elevators turning into operating rooms. This station is a relic. These tunnels have witnessed important events in British history. York Road. The Piccadilly line again. What a lucky line! York Road closed in 1932. On the same day that the section of the line from Finsbury Park to Arnos Grove opened. The number of passengers plummeted, and for about a couple of years, there was a debate about whether to leave the station open. As a result, it was decided to close it. It's a pity because the station was truly beautiful. Just look at these wonderful oxblood tiles. Even now, York Road has a rather pleasant appearance. But there's still a chance that one day we'll see the rebirth of York Road. This city area is currently under reconstruction. If more people settled there, the station could be reopened again. What a great world of underground London. Who could have known that they have a whole web of structures below that hold so much history? It's a pity that the passages are closed. It would be very interesting to see all of this, but also pretty scary. We just can't get enough of Mars, can we? Everyone wants to go there, and astronauts are now looking at caves on the red planet where they can live once people inhabit it. The planet itself has some similar characteristics to Earth. Yeah, it's somewhat smaller than Earth, but the time it takes for the planets to revolve around themselves is also similar, which is about a day. On paper, Mars might seem like a good idea given some similarities to Earth, but there are some factors we need to pay attention to before we consider stepping foot there. The temperature. Mars might look like a scorching hot planet like a freakishly large Sahara Desert, but quite the opposite. It's really cold. Mars has a reputation for being a freezing, desolate, endless land that happens to have the largest mountain in our solar system thus far. So, within those mountains, astronauts and scientists are considering whether naturally built caves are the answer to our survival. Caves won't be the worst thing we'd live in considering our ancestors used to dwell in caves in communities. Logically, it's the best place to stay dry during a storm and keep warm. It's the best place for protection against predators like giant birds, elephants, and saber-toothed cats. We even had our first art shows in caves with evidence of cave art dated thousands of years ago. Caves are a good idea, and they can also help us save a lot of money when establishing a colony on Mars. Rather than building a fresh structure in the middle of an open plain, the cave structure will help and influence the architecture, potentially saving lots and lots of money. Going to Mars will be expensive. It's already expensive sending people to the moon and launching a rocket into space. So, we have to consider the logistics. Another thing to look out for is caves in the ground that are not necessarily stuck on mountains. Scientists believe that most potential places for humans to thrive are caves. These spaces are large enough to host large populations. So far, they identified 9 caves as large as football fields. So what would life look like if we lived in caves on Mars? For one thing, sunlight would be hard to access. By the time we reach Mars, we would have the best technology to maximize our lifespan in a hostile environment, which means withstanding the harsh sun rays of Mars. Most likely, we would dig through the caves further underground where oxygen would be pumped for everyone to breathe. People can walk around casually, thinking they're on Earth, and to exit the caves, you would need to wear a special suit. These cave colonies would have dormitories for people to live in and special spaces for colony meetings, entertainment, grocery markets, schools, and other places that are needed to sustain a colony. There would also be indoor farms to grow crops and raise livestock. A team of experts mapped out what some of the dwellings will look like on Mars. And just like on Earth, we will have apartments for young professionals, family homes, and luxury mansions. Some of the dwelling units would be placed on the surface and not in caves. One of the key elements of the design and architecture is how to build it around the natural light to brighten up the homes. Another element is how to deflect radiation and cosmic rays. Because Mars has such a thin atmosphere, sun rays and other hazardous objects easily enter Mars. The dwelling units also have to be sturdy to protect them from severe dust storms and extreme cold temperatures. Some of the living pods or dwelling units that are for couples or singles would have tunnels leading to a shared workspace and garden. Studies show that even being in the presence of greenery can reduce stress levels significantly. And on the red planet, we would definitely need some greenery. We can expect the family homes to be built within the caves, not necessarily underground. It would be tempting to head outside with the view of Mars, but the large thick glass would prevent anything from coming in and out. Those who are underground with a view rely on LEDs and camera systems to screen the surface landscape of Mars so it acts like real windows. And if you're bored of the surface, you can always switch the channel and watch something else as you please. Maybe a flowing river surrounded by trees. Or maybe a penthouse view of all of New York. The choice is yours. There would be a driveway that leads to a garage so one can enter and exit easily. There won't really be a reason to exit the cave colony except probably to visit other cave colonies. In this case, we would have highly crafted vehicles that will take people from colony to colony on the surface. The vehicles can withstand harsh temperatures and would be constantly transporting people daily. Some people might live in a certain colony and have to commute to work every day in other colonies. Humans might not have to be working in dangerous conditions or on the surface. We would have robots that will do that for us. The thing about robots is that they don't need to be human-shaped to do a job. However, before transporting humans to space, we would need to create some human-like robots and land them on Mars. With the exact physical form, we can determine what would happen to people if they were on Mars. We would have robots for specific tasks, helping us with everything. Let's not forget artificial intelligence plays a major role in monitoring the systems and updating the functionalities of the colony. It'll know when certain systems need fixing, adjusting, renewing, and changing. We also need people to keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary, and also to make sure people are behaving and not breaking the law. Getting to Mars would be the earliest obstacle we will face. We've already launched some robots to explore the terrain and conduct some studies. At first, we would send robots to test the conditions and to build most of the infrastructure. To build a proper colony, we would have to send out young couples willing to dedicate their lives to the future and the future of their children. It won't be easy. In fact, there would be a variety of people with different professions and specializations to help establish the colony. People would have to work and establish a local economy. We would need scientists, doctors, farmers, teachers for the children, and engineers to maintain the structure. It will take time for the colony to reach a substantial size, but it's all part of the process. Even the spaceships would need to be large and sufficient to house thousands of people traveling from Earth. Of course, by then, most of the dwelling units would have been built, and people would have already picked out their houses, depending on if they were single or if they were about to start a family. Once the colony has the necessary professionals it needs, then come the other people who wish to start their life on Mars. People would need entertainment, so musicians would find a place in the colony. We can't expect everyone to go out on a nice sunny day to the beach, but perhaps one day, when the colony is large enough, there can be an artificial body of water with the same elements as the beach. Livestock animals would also be shipped from Earth to be raised on Mars, where they can populate for our nourishment. We can also bring most of the animals and establish a wildlife sanctuary for everyone to enjoy and for the animals to thrive. For now, humans are planning on reaching the Red Planet sooner than we think, and who knows, maybe you can be one of the first people to sign up and have your own little dwelling unit far away from Earth.
There are many miles of undiscovered areas beneath the crust we can't even come close to. Scientists found what appears to be underground mountains buried inside the mantle. Our planet is divided into 3 layers: the crust, the mantle, and the core. The crust is where 8 billion people, trillions of trees, and millions of animals live and thrive. There are also different types of crust in the land and the ocean. The oceanic crust contains unique rocks and is denser than the land crust. We all see how the Earth is divided and color-coded to show the crust, mantle, and core in textbooks. But there are also special layers in between that not everyone talks about. The mantle is divided into the upper and lower part, which is the transition zone. Since the mantle acts as the geological recycling center, the plate tectonics don't only move side to side, but up and down. It's actually why all the volcanoes appeared. The magma spews out to the surface or even underwater and then sinks back down and repeats. The transitions go down 250 miles and then 410 miles. And in this bottom layer, scientists keep discovering the hidden landscapes. The mountains in the mantle are more rugged and much larger than the ones on the crust. Scientists found a mountain range with peaks higher than Mount Everest. Some of them are as high as 600 miles. When the continents were still landlocked together, there may have been some hidden lands now underwater. theories suggest that Iceland used to be part of a larger microcontinent, Icelandia, which connected present-day Iceland with Greenland and Scandinavia. The idea digs even deeper to a greater Icelandia, which includes Britain. But after the split, these bigger lands sunk with everything in it. There are also theories about New Zealand being part of Zealandia, a hidden microcontinent within the same region. So it could be that these mountains used to be part of old Earth that are underground over the billions of years of natural occurrences, but still it isn't very likely. One theory is that these underground mountain ranges could be leftover slabs of rock that descended from the surface to the transition zone from the moving of the tectonic plates. As they sink, the large pieces break down into smaller ones, and as they compile over the millions of years, they form what appears to be underground mountains. Since the mantle is the geologic recycling zone, it's likely that the rocks down there used to be part of the surface. They weren't large pieces of land that got hidden, just like dogs hide bones in the garden, but it takes way more time to hide mountains. Some parts of the mantle appear to be smooth, while others aren't so much. The parts that have a cluster of rocks could contain hidden elements in the underground mountains. The smoother parts don't have much seismic or volcanic activity, while the rough parts do. The best way to study those underground landscapes is to wait for an earthquake or a volcano eruption to happen. Seismologists can observe the Earth's interior with special scanners, just like doctors use ultrasound to examine a patient. They can even see minor details and not huge chunks of rocks. A strong enough earthquake can send shock waves to the Earth's interior, even through the core and back up to the surface. Depending on where they occur, seismologists can observe and study the intensity of the waves as they move back and forth. On smooth rocks, the waves can travel in a straight line, but once they reach a rough area, the waves tend to scatter. The temperature and composition of the materials can make the waves move faster or slower. But this info isn't exactly accurate and won't contribute a lot to the actual data of the underground mountains. So by analyzing the scattered waves on ships and utilizing the Earth's magnetic field, scientists can figure out everything they need to know. But these studies are only good enough to figure out the interior in today's state, not how the Earth changed over the past 4.5 billion years. However, scientists are certain that mantle material still dates back to the beginning of Earth's original formation. The question, why not just dig a hole to the center of the Earth and see what's going on down there, might seem logical. The deepest hole humans have dug so far is the Kola Deep Borehole in the Russian Arctic that goes more than 40,000 feet deep. The locals claim they can actually hear screaming coming from below. It took almost 20 years to drill as far as they went, but it's literally merely scratching the surface of what's underneath. They dug about 1/3 of the crust, which is only 0.2% to the center of the Earth. Getting there is beyond us, just like trying to reach the sun. No human can handle the amount of pressure down there. Going down the Mariana Trench, the Earth's deepest point, requires special gear to withstand all the immense pressure. It'll cost a fortune to build that tech to get us to the center of our planet. Evidence of diamonds buried deep in Brazil shows that everything we do on the crust's surface can affect things miles below, even towards the mantle. Scientists dug up 6 diamonds that could hold tiny mineral grains. As they're called in the mineral world, these inclusions have a chemistry composition where they originated deep in the Earth. Typical diamonds are formed at depths less than 125 miles in the upper mantle, where it's extremely hot. The high pressure and boiling temperature down crystallizes carbon and creates diamonds. But humans can't dig all the way down there. They mine them by detecting where a deep volcanic eruption happened that expelled these diamonds to the surface. These eruptions occurred millions of years ago, when dinosaurs used to rule the Earth. They shot out the diamonds that were in the mantle and are now embedded within the cooled down volcanic material. That's where people mine them. But these special diamonds found in Brazil originated from a much deeper point than usual, which can further help scientists study the depths of the Earth. They can extract these inclusions and analyze them in a lab to tell where exactly these minerals come from. In the lab, scientists study inclusions, each just 15 to 40 microns wide, less than a quarter width of a human hair. They found out that they contained many types of minerals found in volcanic rock on the surface. The carbon composition of the magma from the surface is much different than the ones deep in the earth. What's crazy is that these diamonds with special inclusions can only be found 435 miles in the lower mantle. With only a few samples of them found, we don't know what else lies beneath us. It's possible that those mountain ranges underground, taller than Mount Everest, can have traces of diamonds all around, which would prompt excavators to dig them up and saturate the market with them. These diamonds are less flawed than the usual ones and might even come in many sizes. It's possible to see diamonds as large as a car or as small as a grain of rice. There might even be new diamonds with different chemical compositions than the ones we find near the surface. The largest diamond in the world is the cullinan, which can fit in the palm of your hand. It weighs around 1.3 pounds and is 3,100 carats. It was found in 1905 in South Africa. For anything to exist on Earth, you need carbon. In a nutshell, the carbon cycle is when plants and algae release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere or dissolved in water through photosynthesis. It's converted into carbohydrates and stored as fat. Later on, carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere through breathing, which the plants benefit from, and the cycle goes on. Scientists claim that there might even be a carbon cycle in Earth's interior. The oceanic crust has a lot of carbon sediment that could mix with the upper and lower mantle layer. But there still isn't enough evidence to support this. The deep diamonds might be the key to popping open that theory. Only time will tell.
Whittingdean Water Well. It may have the title of the deepest hand-dug well in the world, but at first sight, it's just a small covered well you wouldn't even assume that it's there. It's located somewhere close to Brighton and Hove, England. Despite its inconspicuous appearance, it's as deep as the Empire State Building is tall, 1,280 feet straight down into the dark, wet ground. Hey, toss in a penny and make a wish. Wait, it's not a wishing well. Never mind. In the middle of the 19th century, one powerful corporation wanted to build a new workhouse in the area that today is known as Elm Grove. They decided to add it to an industrial school for juveniles as well. It was established for those whose parents were living in the local workhouse, and the aim was to teach the youth the habits of industry. The corporation wanted to provide water for their new institution, so they dug a new well. It was too expensive to bring piped water in from the nearby waterworks. They first wanted to make a 6 feet wide brick-lined well down to about 400 feet. That's where they expected to find the subterranean water table. They were digging for 2 years, and the shaft went past those depths, but they still didn't find any water. They thought they somehow missed the water source, so they started digging horizontally in 4 different directions. Even after many hours of work and multiple tunnels in different directions, still nothing. For the next 2 years, they didn't stop digging. Workers would descend rickety ladders hundreds of feet below the surface, illuminated just by the light of candles. They only used hand tools to load their buckets with soil and pass them up to the surface. Then they would use bricks other workers would send down from above to line the narrow interior. The heat down there was intense. They were able to breathe thanks to steam engines that would pump air through pipes down below. After 4 years of digging, they got to a depth of 1,285 feet. 850 feet of that was below sea level. At that point, the water finally broke through the surface. But as it was coming up, the workers were trying to escape it. It took them 45 minutes to scramble up such a deep shaft. It was expensive, and the company put enormous effort into this well, and they used it for just 4 years. They abandoned the well in favor of some other, more practical one. A 2-foot flint and brick wall is surrounding Whittingdean Water Well now. There's also a metal lid covering its top so people wouldn't fall in. It would certainly feel like a journey to the center of the earth, don't you think? It took a research team 20 years to drill down the Kola Superdeep Borehole. This one is over 40,000 feet deep. And despite getting so deep, they never actually reached the mantle. The drill bit was just around 1/3 of the total way through the crust to the mantle. The heat was insane, which made their work extra hard. Also, their drill got stuck in a rock, so the whole project was finally abandoned in 1989. The Kola Peninsula is located deep in the Arctic Circle. Forests, lakes, snow, and mysterious mists kind of turn this area into a scene from a fairy tale. But in the middle of one crumbling building there, you can see a heavy, rusty metal cap. It's embedded in the concrete floor, as well as secured by a thick, rusty ring of metal bolts. And that's the deepest artificial point on our planet. Bingham Canyon Mine, near Salt Lake City, Utah, is a cool one too. More people know it as the Kennecott Copper Mine. This mine spans 3 square miles and produces more copper than all other mines have in our world's history. It was opened at the beginning of the 20th century. It's owned by a large multinational corporation at the moment. Back in 2010, they even declared they'd like to dig the mine further and deepen it for another 300 feet. Bingham Canyon Mine has so many roads. If you could stretch them out into one large road, it would go from Salt Lake City all the way to Denver. There was a massive landslide in April 2013 in this area, so strong it even caused its own earthquakes. This is the world's deepest open-pit mine, so deep astronauts can see it from orbit. Humans first started digging towards the planet's mantle in the 1960s. That's when American scientists began with something they named Project Mohole. The project got its name after a man who found the boundary between the Earth's mantle and crust. The team didn't drill on land, but on a boat in the ocean. The crust is actually thinner on the ocean floor, although the difficult part is that the crust is the thinnest in areas where the ocean is deepest. Go figure. The researchers were drilling next to the island of Guadalupe, which is off the west coast of Mexico. There's a pit of impressive size and an amazing background story. One man in a drought-ridden part of India has really done the impossible. He dug a well in only 40 days. His wife wasn't allowed to draw water from a well that was in the village because of the caste they belonged to. The man decided to dig a well by himself and give a source of water both to his family and the community. Nobody believed it was possible, but he took his shovel and kept digging day after day before going to work every morning, and later in the evening after he would finish the work. 40 days later, he finally got to the water and proved that some people can sometimes truly stretch their mental and physical limits to achieve what's impossible. Now imagine how difficult it is to dig a mine by hand. And we're talking about a really big hole mine. They would mine diamonds without any machinery. You can find such a case in South Africa in the province of Kimberley. A geological pipe there was formed after a breakthrough of gases in the crust of our planet. The pipe was named Kimberlite after the location, just like others in that area. It's in the shape of a pretty large carrot. You can see its upper conical part that narrows as it goes deeper, turning into a vein in the end. 1870 was the time when the diamond fever began in the city of Kimberley. Nearly 50,000 people were mining and extracting more than 20 million tons of soil using only their picks and shovels. The development area was close to 2 million square feet. They dug up to 787 feet from 1871 to 1914 and extracted enormous amounts of diamonds, worth more than $1 billion. This mine has become an artificial lake. Today, it's the most picturesque landmark in this province. Darvaza Crater is one of the world's most unique spots you can find. It's a burning hole people actually made more than 40 years ago. This gaping crater opened up in the desert of Turkmenistan. It was most likely a consequence of a drilling mishap. Geologists then set it on fire on purpose. They were afraid all those noxious gases would have a negative impact on the environment, so they wanted to burn them off. They also wanted to prevent the spread of methane gas after the ground below the drilling rig collapsed into a cavern. So now we have a 98-foot deep hole. They thought the crater would burn for only a week. Oops! but they were wrong. Thing is, the crater's been burning for over 40 years now. Actually, it's not that bad. The hole on fire eventually turned into a quite popular spot that attracts many tourists. This site looks like the portal to the Earth's core. Hey, maybe you have some marshmallows we can roast?